Hello, everyone. Welcome to the New Visions Global History Curriculum webinar. I'm Timothy Lent. I work on the curriculum project, and this is...
This is Camila Rashid. I also work with Timothy Lent on the Global History Curriculum Project.
Hey, this is our first webinar, so take it easy on us. A couple of things. First, there is a chat function in Zoom, and that is how we're going to be taking attendance today. So you'll notice on the bottom left-hand section of your screen, it says type your name and school into the chat box as proof of attendance. So please do that. And that's how we'll make sure that everyone gets credit for being here, CTLE credits if that's what you need. Also, there's a tiny URL link right there at the bottom of the screen. That's how you can get to the presentation for today. Great. So the purpose of this webinar is it's an introduction to the curriculum as a whole. We're going to talk about why the curriculum exists, what our intention is for it, and we're going to show you how to use it a little bit. We're going to go to the website, show you how to modify resources, all that good stuff. So we're going to get started. Oh, here you go. Do you want me?
Yep. So we just want to quickly remind you guys again, if you haven't already found the chat function, it is a small box at the bottom of your screen that says chat. Once you open that up, you'll be able to see and hear from everyone through the chat. Thank you so much to everyone so far who's given us their name and school. And thank you to Chris from Indiana, who has also given us the years he used to teach back in New York, back in the 90s and early 2000s. Thanks.
Cool. All right, so first, let's talk about what New Visions is. New Visions is a nonprofit organization here in New York City, and we've been around for 30 years. We support around 70 public schools here in New York City. Most of those are regular public high schools, but there's a small segment of them that are charter schools. And for anyone who's in New York State, you can kind of consider us like a BOCES in that we provide schools with HR support, data analysis, professional development. And 5 years ago, we started curriculum projects. The first one being global history, which we write.
So a little bit more about this curriculum that we've developed. The New Visions Global History and Geography curriculum is a full scope and sequence for 9th and 10th grade course out of New York City. And we're focused on using the framework as our anchor document, and we're also using the Common Core, which is also infused through the framework to center our work. As you can see in the map that is also on that slide, we clearly work a lot with schools in New York City, but we also have lots of users across New York State. I'm really excited to hear from everyone, even the folks in Indiana and across the country who have been using the curriculum. So when we first started this project, we were super excited because Tim and I were former global history teachers in the classroom, and there are tons of things that we noticed that were hard about teaching global history in New York State, and we noticed that those things were really difficult for teachers as well. We noticed that there were really low pass rates in the global history regions, and that low pass rate was preventing students from graduating on time and in some cases graduating at all. We also knew that once the new framework was adopted in 2014, a lot of schools were really struggling with what do I do with this new document that has tons of new language, tons of new requirements, and it's just difficult to do that while also trying to teach. We also thought about in New York State, but more specifically in New York City, there's a high teacher turnover rate. And when these teachers are at schools for 1 or 2 years, they do really great stuff and then they leave, which really, is unfortunate. The other unfortunate part is that sometimes they take their curriculum with them, or it wasn't well organized enough for someone to implement it upon their departure. And with that being said, that leads teachers into really interesting positions where they're spending lots of time looking for resources. And our supervisor has often shared statistics with us about how teachers are spending upwards of 9, 10, 11 hours just looking for things. So that's 9 or 10 hours that you're spending looking for stuff versus figuring out what's going to happen when you get in front of students, grading work and giving feedback, improving student engagement around resources and ideas. And then finally, something we were really excited about when we started the curriculum project was thinking about infrequent cross-school collaboration. Sometimes teachers are the only teacher in their classroom, or in their school, and that means they have no one else to talk to about all of these issues. So really excited for the Global History Project to provide a common resource and language and opportunity through our PD to talk about these things. With that being said, collaboration is a super important part of the work that we do with the curriculum, and we believe that there are tons of amazing teachers who are teaching global history, and we feel that through that collaboration, we're going to be able to produce a curriculum that's far better than any of us could individually design. So our curriculum is really based in thinking about how we can use cycles of feedback, common student assessments, collaboration, and a cohesive core curriculum to support our students' learning in our classrooms and in their post-secondary lives. And we, again, believe that we can create together something more comprehensive and effective than any of us can independently design in our own silos.
Hey, so at this point and at any point during the webinar, we'd like you to ask questions. We don't have any particular questions set up for everyone to answer. But as they come up, just type them into the chat. And we've got a few times that we're going to stop, answer anything that's pertinent to what we've been talking about. And hopefully we can answer all the questions you've got.
Yeah.
Okay. As we go forward in the webinar. I'd like to talk a little bit about our theory of change here at New Visions. So the Global History Project is just one of many curriculum projects that we have, and we've got a whole theory of change that works for all of them. Basically, we believe that if teachers use a common scope and sequence and they teach the same concepts around the same time with some high quality materials, if they use formative assessments and look at the student work that comes out of those formative assessments, if they do this in communities of practice with other colleagues that are using the same curriculum, and if you're using technology to most efficiently manage your courses, then we hope teacher practice will improve, and if teacher practice improves, that student outcomes can improve as well. Just to give you an idea of how we put this material together. We start with the New York State Social Studies Framework. I know there are many people here from outside of the state, but since education is so state-centric in the United States, we stick to the one that we're in. So that's our standards document. And we go into there and see what the expectations are for New York State's social studies teachers. Then we do a ton of research. We try to gather as much information and resources as we can online. We look for videos, we look for images, we look for primary, secondary sources. And then we try to put them all together in what we call student-facing materials. Student-facing materials are just things that you would use with students after modifying them for your students' needs. So we're not trying to produce 30-page documents that are just for teachers to read. We assume that you know what to do with materials that are meant for students and that you can activate them yourselves. So we spend our time putting together things that could be used with students. We then revise and edit all the materials internally, get a couple sets of eyes on them, and then we put them out the door pretty quickly. We put our materials up on our website, we will put them out through our newsletter, we'll show them off at workshops, and every once in a while I put them on Twitter. And then we enter this cycle of continuous improvement, which is basically the cycle that we've been in for the last 3 years since we put the bare bones curriculum up on the site. So a lot of you may have noticed that the curriculum changes a lot. Maybe you see a document that is different from the one you saw last year. That's because of all the feedback we get from teachers, from Google comments, from emails, from workshops where we're getting feedback from teachers, and most importantly, from being in classrooms. Camila's in classrooms here in New York City. I'm in classrooms in Buffalo and around New York State. And as I'm sitting in a classroom, I'm taking notes on how things are going and often revising the materials as I sit in the classroom. So we're in this cycle of continuous improvement, I don't know, for forever.
Yes.
Trying to make things better. And we're hoping that just through all of the user's expertise, we can get to the best curriculum we can possibly make. Let's talk about what the curriculum is and what it isn't before we go to the website. First, what it is. It's a set of teacher and student-facing materials. And for the student-facing materials, we've got all sorts of stuff. We've got vocabulary activities, primary source close reads, primary source inquiries, and end-of-unit assessments that are cumulative. We've got activities that you can use with students with lots of different content that we call instructional routines. We've got videos linked in, transcripts, and there's activities and questions that go with every single one of the resources that we've got. For teachers, there's pacing calendar, curriculum map, and then there are some lesson level resources that you can make use of. But let's talk about what the curriculum is not. This is even more important. This is not a print and go curriculum. We do not want anybody to go to our website at 7:55 a.m., print out what they're going to use with students, make copies of it, and then hand it to kids exactly as is. You've got to activate these materials for yourself, for your students, and for your own teaching context. Like, we don't know how long your class periods are. We don't know what the initiatives are at your school. We don't know what kind of technology you've got in your classroom. So we're putting together materials that we think make sense to us based on the objectives that we have in the New York State Social Studies Framework. And the rest is for you to modify and change for your students' needs. The second thing this is not, is it is not day-by-day lesson plans. We try to put the materials into groupings that we think can be done in a period-ish, but we know the pacing is crazy and probably not right. So it's up to teachers to decide how they're going to use the materials. We're trying to remove some of the barriers as to like what to use in the classroom, but how you use it is up to you. So you won't see any scripted lesson plans in these materials. You might see some instructional suggestions, but what it really comes to you that makes the big decisions. All right, any questions from the chat?
Awesome. So we see a couple of comments here from folks talking about this language of activating, and we're glad that you guys picked up on that. And we're glad that you guys have also picked up on the modifications, which we'll show you a bit more. But yes, we're very excited about activation because when you guys do that, when we visit classrooms, we get this really amazing opportunity to see the ways in which the curriculum can be enacted in ways we had never imagined. So going into a class and seeing someone take an inquiry and do an amazing group activity, and that isn't something we had imagined, we can then spread and share that at other schools. So we're really excited that people have picked up on that.
Oh, that is a good question.
Kelly, yeah.
Is there a way to know when a particular resource has been modified from a previous version? I've made copies of some documents, but also want to use the most up-to-date versions. Not at this time, no. That would be great.
We've been searching for a script that would allow for people who have downloaded it to get some type of like ping that tells them such, but that does not exist as yet. But as soon as it does, we will let you know.
Yeah, and we could put a little note next to every resource on the curriculum as to like when it was updated last, but it's not something that we've done, but it's something that we're considering doing. Because we run into a lot of issues where I'll be working with a teacher and they'll have had a copy that they made last year and used, and they start using it in their classroom and they don't know we actually made a lot of the corrections that people told us about from the previous year, and then they're using something that's out of date and could be better. Yeah, but excellent question. All right, moving on.
Alrighty, so much of what you guys have been talking about is just right along the lines of what we really care about. So I think we missed a slide. Oh, yes, we did. Just going back quickly. And thinking about a lot of the things that you guys have been saying, of course, modifying the need resources to meet the needs of your students. And we like to take an evidence-based approach, and evidence doesn't always mean like test data. It also means circulating in the classroom to see what students are struggling with, talking to students to ask them about things they're interested in, looking at IEPs and 504 plans to figure out what accommodations are needed, and using that evidence to inform the decisions that you're making about how the resources are designed. We also really encourage teachers to complete the activities before they assign them to students. It may seem like a lot to ask, but we think it's really important because in that process, you can figure out that maybe this is gonna take longer than 45 minutes, or maybe there's like a vocab word that you know you have to front load, or maybe you figure out that based upon the skill level of your students, this might be too easy. You might need to find another document as an extension activity. So we encourage you guys to do it beforehand. It increases the empathy you have towards your students, particularly around the cognitive demand of what you're asking them to do. And finally, we also encourage you guys to be aware of pacing and to choose carefully what you emphasize and de-emphasize. And when we say pacing, we're talking about content, but we're also talking about what skills you're emphasizing, pacing to make sure you have opportunities for assessments and giving feedback to students. Those are our suggestions for instructors, but some of us work as coaches as well. And when we think about the curriculum with coaches, we really encourage you guys to think about using the curriculum to bring teachers together to collaborate, particularly in thinking about if there are sections that people might be teaching before someone else that can be modeled by one teacher, or just to have a common language and sort of ethos for how you move through content and skills. We also encourage you guys to use the curriculum to engage in evidence-based cycles of inquiry with student work. Looking at student work to figure out where students are is really great so that you can give them actionable feedback and so that you know how to shift your instruction. And as a department, figuring out strategies that you'll use department-wide for vertical alignment. And finally, we talked about this before, teachers are spending tons of time looking for like the right translation of Hammurabi's Code or like the right Communist Manifesto excerpt. We don't want you guys spending time on that. And instead, we want you guys to use department time to figure out what instructional strategies you're going to use, what types of pairings you might engage in, what types of routines and strategies you think are most effective. And so using the curriculum as a way to save time in looking for things and to devote more time to actually collaborating in order to figure out common instructional strategies. And then finally, just giving you guys like 1 minute to read this slide. These are some tips from the experts, which are you guys, teachers. So take about a minute to read the slide, and I'm gonna focus on just 2 of them that I think are most important. Take a minute. Webinars don't really work well for awkward silences, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in there. So you guys will see tons of tips from experts, our teachers here. There are 2 that I really want to emphasize. The first one is sort of, it's actually in the center of the screen, so that's great. It's a core value that Tim and I sort of like live by this product. New Visions is not meant to be the final word on social studies. Tim and I taught in the classroom. Tim and I have been at New Visions. Tim and I have done many things in our lives, and we are not the final word. We really love when teachers challenge us to say, like, did you think about this? We also really love when we get feedback. And so if you've already done something amazing for the Industrial Revolution and you think it's better than what we made, use what you made. We're not offended. This is not, you have to use all of it or none of it. We're not the final word. The other thing that I want to emphasize from the teachers, they talked about organizing documents with sort of like a rhythm. So this idea of having a clear instructional sort of schema or process of making sure you're modeling things, making sure you're giving opportunities to do a think aloud, making sure you're giving opportunities for guided practice, for independent practice, and restructuring our resources to make sure that students have opportunities to do all of those things. We're really excited. We think our teachers, we know that our teachers have made this product substantially better. Oops, how much you enter that?
Okay. All right. We got a couple of questions that came in the chat. Okay, the first is about US history exams.
Mm.
For those of you not in New York State, we've had big changes to our end of year assessments here. And one of the big changes this year that's happening is US history, and nobody has very much information about it. So when we go to the website, which is coming up soon, I'm going to take you to the part of the site where you can see everything we've got for US history, which includes some assessments that are aligned to the new exam. And we've got a bunch of just information that you can turnkey to your districts if you need to.
Mhm.
And the second question is from Mary Lynn. What's up, Western New York?
Mhm.
And she wants to know, especially for new teachers, it can be overwhelming how much you have. Yeah, no shoot.
Mhm.
You don't need to use everything as a relief. However, how do you mark any lessons as must do? That's a great question. We don't mark any lessons as must do, but there are a couple of things in the curriculum that we think are critical. First are inquiries, especially in 10th grade. And the second, as far as content to cover, is a list that I'm going to show you in our Regents Readiness section that might give you, especially new teachers, a little more direction as to what you should cover when.
Yep.
Okay. All right. What's next? Let's go to the website.
Mhm.
Okay, now we're going to go to the website, which means we're going away from this screen. So if you haven't already, the tiny URL link on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, that's the link for the presentation. And if you haven't done this yet, please type your name and school into the chat so that we can take attendance. That way we can give everyone credit for CTLE hours if you need them, New York State teachers. And if not, well, it'll just be nice to know that you were here.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to go to curriculum.newvisions.org. Curriculum.newvisions.org. Ready to go. And I'm going to do this in an incognito window. Oh, I have it bookmarked.
Should all have it bookmarked.
Yeah. Curriculum.newvisions.org. Oh, Beth is in Florida. I'll keep that. Okay. So let's, this is the website where you can get access to all of the curriculum that New Visions has produced. Just a note, all the curriculum projects are a little different. They're all produced with the content specific in mind. So social studies is very much geared towards historical thinking skills. Science, ELA, math are all geared towards being students of math, young scientists, and so on. We're going to click on social studies, being that it's the best subject and the one we're here to talk about today. So this is the website. And I want to show you a couple of things on the site, how to use it. First, I'm going to use the website the way most people use the website. They look up here at the topics that we have listed, and then they select the one that they're teaching. I'm teaching Global 2. And then they go down to the topic they're working on right now. Let's say I'm in unit 10.3, causes and effects of industrial revolution. I'm going to give that a click. All right, so here I am on the site, and this is a unit page. Each unit page is set up similarly, where you've got the title and the unit question, and then below that are a series of boxes. The way this works is that you click on each box to expand what's in there. So you can tell here under the purple one, unit planning resources, this is where you can find the unit plan, the course overview, the pacing calendar, and our list of concept maps for the full course, which you should check out. They're really cool. A note about unit plans, they're kind of out of date right now. We're working on our unit plans this summer, so look forward to some revisions for that. We have all the resources listed in a way to encourage backwards design. So the first thing you're going to see is the end of unit assessments. All of our end of unit assessments, excuse me, are cumulative, which means there is content from all the previous units on every end of unit assessment. Now, a couple things to note. I'm going to give this a click right here, end of unit assessment for 10.3. And then what most people do is they don't read any of this text here and they just click on the purple button that says open resource. What you're missing is that there's a note here that says that we have locked down our assessments, basically because students found out that their assessments were online and they got all the answers and then they sold them to their classmates and then their teachers told us we had to do something about it. So we have a system for that.
Responding now, there are a couple folks are unable to see the website.
My bad.
So yes, we were just on the wrong. Yep.
My bad.
Right there.
Is that it? Dang. Okay.
We're back.
Well, we're not going to put this up for posterity now.
Mhm.
All right, let me go back a little bit. It's going to be real quick. You're good now. You can see it on your.
Yep, everyone's
All right,
good.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, sorry everyone.
Jay Riley asked you to please go back just to make sure.
Will do. Here I am at curriculum.newvisions.org. Now I can't use the same jokes I usually do.
You can't.
Curriculum.newvisions.org. That's where you can find all the curriculum projects. And you can just go down and select social studies. It's the best one.
It is still.
Okay. So after going to the social studies curriculum, I decided to go to what I'm teaching right now, which is Global 2 and Unit 3, Industrial Revolution. So this is the unit page and it's set up to encourage backwards design. So we've got the planning resources first, and you can just click on these little boxes to expand them and then click on the resources that are there. That's how you can access all the materials. This is where I left off, so this is a good spot to go. End of unit assessments are listed first so that we're looking at the end first, keeping that in mind. And when I click on end of unit assessment, this is the page with all the information. And right here, it says, please fill out the form linked here. You fill out this form if you don't have access to our assessments yet. And tomorrow morning, you'll be granted access to those assessments. And like I said, that's basically because students are finding the answers and we need to do something about it.
Yes.
So if you click on that form, there's just some information that we request: your first name, your last name, your school district, a school email address. And this is what we're looking for here, is basically an email address that proves that you're an educator. So gmail.com accounts are not going to get you access to the assessments for this field. The next field where it says Google email address, you could put in any Google account. So if your school already uses Google Apps for Education, you might use that. If you do not, then you're going to have to put in some other kind of Google account there. That's how you get access to the curriculum, is being logged into your Google account somewhere. Okay. So here I am at the assessments. I'm going to click Open Resource and we'll see what happens. I don't have access because I'm not signed into any Google account. So I'm just going to sign in real quick to my personal account. Hope that I filled out the form. Okay, so this is the end of unit assessment. It's a little different than a lot of the other resources just because it's a test, but it starts out with some teacher materials. It's got standards in it. And then as you scroll down, it gets to the student materials. So those of you in New York State will recognize this format. It looks just like a Regents exam, and it's got section for parts 1, 2, and 3, multiple choice, essays, and CRQs. I'm going to go back to the website. I just clicked over on a tab. I'm going to close out this little white box so I can go back to the site. You'll also note that right below the assessment are the teacher materials for that assessment. I'm not going to click on them, but you can find the answer key and some possible answers for it. Camila, any questions from the chat?
Yes, we had a couple of questions. There's a question about when to decide when students are writing a full enduring issues essay. And we're definitely going to show you guys some resources around that. But my main response was that you should figure out where your students are. Usually that's with a baseline at the beginning of the year, and then identify where you want to go from there. And if you have a team and there's a 9th and 10th grade teacher, having a clear division of labor there, identifying who is going to be doing what writing instruction, so that students have a full 2-year deepening of skills. And there was one lucky person here, I think it's Eric, who teaches in a context where they've been doing enduring issues prep since middle school. And if you're lucky enough, then kids will have multiple years. But I think the longitudinal strategy of coordinating with your 9th and 10th grade teachers so that kids have at least 2 years to deepen their skills is best. And if they can try out multiple examples and tries at enduring issues in 9th grade, that's great, so that the 10th grade is not the first time they try it. We also had a question from El Gallagher asking if we were teaching Industrial Revolution now. Just an example, you should be in World War II. This week we have suggested on our pacing calendar that you start on the Cold War, so you were right on target. Yep, don't worry.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we're showing you a lot of Industrial Revolution stuff today is that we are in that cycle of continuous improvement.
Yep.
And we might be a little behind on the cycle. So we're doing revisions right now on World War I, World War II, and Cold War materials, which you'll have in at least a couple of weeks. And then we're hoping to jump ahead of everyone and have the revisions ready for you.
Yep.
So we're showing you some of the stuff we know is revised the way we want it. But everyone who uses the curriculum already knows that.
Yes.
If you're doing Industrial Revolution right now with your students, get going.
Yeah.
All right. So here I am back on the website, done showing you end of unit assessments. I want to take you to a content resource just to show you what I mean by some of the things that are in the student-facing resources. So I'm going to click on Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. Sirens, we're in New York City. And I'm going to click on urbanization. Here we go. How did industrialization and urbanization affect British cities? So I'm going to give that a click. Okay, so here we've got a student-facing resource. And as I scroll down, this is all teacher material, these first couple pages, and it includes what the supporting question is, what the objectives are, a list of vocabulary words that students might struggle with in the lesson, some possible responses for the formative assessment at the end of the lesson, and some standards information. As we scroll past that, and we try to keep that stuff at a minimum. Like, we don't want to inundate you with teacher materials. We don't need to give you like an academic recitation about the Industrial Revolution. We just need to make sure you got what you need for your lesson plans, so you don't have to go searching for those standards. Right, and then we get back to the student materials, and almost everything starts with an introduction. This could be like you might call it a bell ringer or anticipatory set, whatever you happen to use at your school, or do now. There's an introduction here, followed by some information, usually kind of a mini lesson. And then you can see how we integrate video This will take you to a YouTube video on industrial slums in Manchester.
I'm leaving Quarry Bank Mill.
You're not going to watch it? The vocabulary, little information, some images here, and then there is an activity that goes with all of those resources. This is a pretty short resource, but it ends with a formative assessment. And in this case, you can see this formative assessment has a content and vocabulary checklist. We think this is a good way to communicate to students what the expectations are for their responses, and an opportunity for them to self-assess before turning it in. And then you can see the actual task that they're prompted to do. Explain at least 3 effects of industrialization and urbanization on British cities and those who lived in them. The other thing you might notice here is that I can't change anything. Here I am, I'm selecting, I'm trying to delete, but I can't. This seems like it's a PDF online. It's not. This is a Google Doc, and it's view only for everyone in the world, except for Camila and I. And so if you want to modify this resource, which you should, this is the step you have to remember. File, make a copy. File, make a copy. So there's one step before you do that. First, make sure that you're signed into some kind of Google account. You can see up here in the upper right-hand corner, I have this little T here that means that's me, Tim, signed in on my Google account. If you don't have anything up there in the upper right-hand corner, you need to sign into something. Then you go to File and hit Make a Copy. This gives you an opportunity to rename the file if you'd like. You can organize it. It's going to go to what's called Google Drive. It's kind of like your hard drive on your computer, but it's in the cloud, and it's attached to Google. So I'm just going to leave this named as is, and I'm going to hit OK. And here is my copy. I own it, and now I can make any modifications I'd like. Like, I don't really want my students to have all this teacher information, so I'm going to select that and delete it before I hand it to them. Get out of here. I'm going to change up the formative assessment, let's say, or I've got better images than these ones, so I'm going to delete these and change them out. Whatever I need to do, I can. All right. So one other thing to note, like let's say you're not that into Google stuff, you can also download these as Microsoft Word documents to change them in Microsoft Word. You can also do it as PDF if you need to have a PDF to maybe send out through Schoology or something. That's a limitation in that platform. But if you're going to download in Microsoft Word, beware that you may have to do some extra work. You might lose some images. The formatting might change a little bit. So we recommend that you make a copy in Google Docs, make the changes through that, and then use it as is. Yeah. Anyone hear dogs?
Does someone have a dog?
Here, somebody's been unmuted. There we go.
Oh, okay.
That was
There
my
we
fault.
go.
I hit something. Okay. Any other questions from?
No other
The group?
questions.
Okay.
No worries. We like dogs, so it's a welcome.
That's
A
me.
welcomed change.
Okay, so I'm back on the website, and there's another part of the site I'd like to take you to that gets at some of the questions that came earlier. It's a part of the site that's rarely used by people who come here. And this is particularly important for New York State teachers, but I think that there's things here that people from out of state would really find useful. So it's the Regents Readiness section of the site. let me just correct a few misconceptions. Just because it says Regents Readiness doesn't mean it's something you shouldn't look at if you're teaching Global 1, 9th grade. It's also not something you should wait till April to check out. These are the resources for writing. These are the resources for year-long content retention. These are the resources that are going to help you organize what you're doing all year long so that when you get to June, the kids are confident and ready to take that exam. So I'm going to click on the second option here, the Regents Prep Writing Resources for Global 2. All right, here I am. Now, just a warning, there's a ton of stuff here. So take your time, go working through it. I'm going to show you a couple of things to note that might be helpful. So as I scroll down, I'm not going to expand all these boxes, but if you're looking for information about the Global 2 exam, you can come here and you can check out the Office of State Assessment website or some of our memos or our presentations that we use. You can use those in your school. We've also started putting out Regents exam analyses. So if you want to know how many of the questions from the previous Regents exam were primary sources and how many were secondary sources, if you want to know how many required outside information to answer, you can go here to find those statistics. We're almost done with the January 2020 analyses, so that's going to be up soon. All right, quick stop. The exam question bank is important. For those of you in New York State especially, there are not a lot of tests that have been put out for the new Regents exams for Global and US. So this is where you can find all of the items that we've ever written and all the items that we've gleaned from old Regents exams that still align to the new framework. So let me just give this a click. And this is something that's going to help out with the question about the US history exams as well, because we've got items for you. All right, so this is the exam question bank, and if you scroll down to the bottom of it, you can see all of the options. So all these links will take you to stimulus-based multiple choice questions, constructed response questions, enduring issues sets for Global 1 and Global 2. There's also materials for US history, for stimulus-based multiple choice questions, short essay questions, and the civic literacy essay. We've got some items for that, but not items for every single unit yet. For those of you in New York State, you know that it's kind of just a trickle of information from the state about this new exam. So as we get anything, we're putting materials together. So check that out. Check that out. I'm not going to go click on it because it actually takes a little time to load. All right. I'm back on Regents Readiness, and I want to show you this. This came up as a question for what topics should you cover if you're a new teacher. You should check out these Regents Review plans. And the ones I want to focus on are these two right here. The Spring Semester Global 2 Regents Preparation Plan for students and the 15-day Regents Prep Plan. The spring semester for most schools starts today.
Yep.
So this would be a good time to start looking at this Regents Prep Plan. Basically, the first page is something for students to fill out where they write down when their exam is, an inspirational message or inspirational song they can use when they have trouble on the exam and need some help, some reminders for what they should do to stay consistent and ready, and a place for them to make a plan for when they get into the testing room. What I really want to show you though is on the next page. This is geared as much towards teachers as it is towards students. We've gone through 23 administrations of the Regents exams and counted up all the topics that are frequently asked. And we've narrowed down that list of topics to the ones that are listed in this plan and in the 15-day Regents plan. So if I were to answer what topics to focus on most, it would be the topics that are listed in this plan and the topics that are listed in these review sheets and concept maps. Of course, there's going to be some curveballs that the state throws out, but we can only do what we can. So the way this is laid out is that it's listed by month, and these are assignments that students should work on outside of class, or that you can integrate into class just to make sure that they are held accountable for the work. And you can see that it's linked to a bunch of cool resources. The first are review sheets and concept maps that kids can use to review content. The second is our list of Quizlet cards that are already ready to go for Regents Prep. And then there are sets of multiple choice questions, enduring issues, essay prompts, and CRQs that are all about these topics that are listed here. That's for February. The same thing happens in March, but it's different topics. Same thing in April, different topics. And then as you get to May, you start doing full Regents exams, June 2019 in May, August 2019 in June. And then there's some reminders here for what kids should do the day before the exam and the day of to get ready. The 15-day Regents Prep plan that's also listed has the same resources. It's just a much shorter time period.
While you're in that area, Tim, there's a person who asked about U.S. history and whether there's a comparable version of the student planning document, which I believe there is, correct?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
There is and I'm gonna have to go find it now.
Oh, it may not be on the website now. But who is this? Oh, no worries. You don't have to apologize. What we can do is, if you can put your email address in the chat box.
You can chat it privately.
Or you can chat it privately if you don't want to share with everyone. You can chat it to me. Then we can send you that U.S. history document.
And I'm gonna go to the U.S. history part of the website in just a moment, but I don't know it like the back of my hand.
It may not be on the website yet.
Aruna's gonna kill us for not knowing that answer.
I know.
Okay, the last thing I just wanted to show you on this part of the site is that there's some pretty cool writing resources here too. And they are broken up by section of the exam. So this is writing resources for the constructed response questions. And you can check those out. I'm not gonna scroll through all of them. I am gonna spend a little more time on the enduring issues essay resources. All right, so if I scroll down through the resources for the enduring issues essay, scroll down, this is information from the state, and then you get to these, and these are the resources that we've put together. There's some pretty cool stuff here, and I just wanna highlight a couple of things in particular. The first is this enduring issues essay outline and grading checklist. A lot of people ask for outlines, like how do you teach students how to write this enduring issues essay? This is how we teach students to write the enduring issues essay, and it acts as both an outline that they can use as a scaffold, and it also acts as a way of giving feedback to the students. They can self-assess or have a classmate do it, or you can just come straight from the teacher. And so as I scroll down to the third page, you can see all the components that we think are essential to have in an enduring issues essay, a brief description of that component, and then a place where you could check if the student has it or does not. So if I were grading a kid's essay and looking at their introduction, and I could check off that they identified the enduring issue, that they described the enduring issue, that they have a claim, but they didn't identify the topics they're going to discuss in the essay, I would check off these first three and leave that fourth one blank. And that would be something that I put into the actual written comments. We do the same for body paragraphs, and we try to format it so it would all fit on one page, so you can see body paragraph 1, 2, and 3 feedback right here. If you've got something you do in your school, like maybe you do the quote sandwich or something like that, that's common, or you've got an acronym that you like to use, this is here for you to make a copy of and modify. Maybe you like the idea of a checklist, because it can make things a little faster for grading and make it a little clearer what the expectations are, but you don't like the way we've worded it, go ahead and make a copy. Make a copy, make a change. And then there's an opportunity here to give feedback on the rubric. Just a couple other things for enduring issues, essay writing, and again, there's a ton of stuff here, so take some time to look it over. But there are some specific writing lessons listed at the bottom of this section, and they're aligned to that outline. So in the outline, we say that a thesis requires a claim and a list of topics. So let's say you notice all your students aren't doing that in their writing. You can come here and click on this How to Write an Enduring Issues Essay Thesis, and you'll find a lesson that you can use at any point in the year, doesn't matter what content you're doing, that will help get students there. So just like all the other lessons in the curriculum, it starts with an introduction. There's a mini lesson on how to write a thesis the way that we're teaching it. And then there's some opportunities to practice correcting theses that are not that great or writing their own, whatever it happens to be. We've got lessons like this for writing thesis statements, for contextualizing events, including evidence, connecting cause and effect, and big question mark for a lot of people, continuity and change over time. Yeah, something to check out. I said I would go to US History. I'm gonna go to US History. That's my last stop on the website. And then we're closing in on the end of our webinar. Any urgent questions as I go over there?
No urgent questions. A couple of folks who are asking for US History resources, so I'm gonna email some things, but I think that we should definitely go to the website.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so this was specifically for global history because actually our US History specialist, Aruna Patel, is doing another webinar with a smaller group of teachers right now, so she couldn't be here to do US History. So let's go to US History. And I'm actually gonna go to Regents Readiness US History, where I think we can find a lot of the exam materials that people are asking about.
Yep.
So here I am under Regents Readiness again. I'm going to the last option, Regents Prep for US History. Cool. I love how Aruna's got this listed. Look at the first thing that's on the website. Hey, you're probably here for questions about the US History exam. Click on this. Okay, I will. Fine. So I'm going to click on that big text. And if you're looking for something to send to your colleagues about the new US History exam, this is all the information we know. We don't have a special relationship with the state to find this information out, but we do sit up in the front row in all their presentations. And so we try to get as much information as we can so we can turn it over to you all. So check this out for information about the new US History exam. Again, that was this big text in this Regents Readiness section that says, questions about the new US History exam? Cool. All right, so as I scroll down, there are some resources here that are for the current US History exam, but there are also some resources for the new exam. Towards the bottom, end of unit assessments aligned to the New York State Social Studies framework. So we've been working hard this year to put some assessments together for US History. I showed you the exam question bank. That's where you can find all the items. And we have some items that are not yet in end of unit assessments. So you can come here if you want to check out some of the end of unit assessments right here, units 1 and 2. But I happen to know that there are more than this. That there's actually some end of unit assessments in units 3 and 4 also.
Awesome.
And they are full assessments. So I'm going to go there. Okay. So I'm going to go to unit 3B just to click on the end of unit assessment so I can prove to you that we have some. And we'll include these links in the follow-up email from this webinar. We're recording this webinar, so we're going to be able to send it out to everybody for if you want to revisit it. And we'll also send some of the links and answer some of the questions that came in afterwards. So here I am. I'm going to go to these first two boxes. One says Framework Aligned Unit Assessment Bank. So if you want another way to get to those assessments, you can go here for US history stuff specifically, or you can go to that exam question bank and get to everything together. And then if you scroll down, you go to end of unit assessments, look for the ones that say framework aligned. Give those a click, make sure you're signed in so you don't get rejected. And I should note, and you can tell up here at the top left-hand corner of this resource, that we developed these resources with CUNY, the City University of New York, and their project called Debating US History. They are partners of ours, and they really know US history, and they're helping us out with these assessments. So you can see here, Unit 3 is a full US History Regents exam, Part 1. Goes on for a while. Part 2, short essay questions. And then there's Part 3, a civic. Said it before I scrolled it to the bottom. There totally is an essay for this. We're going to get on that. Yikes. All right, working on it. So we have a couple more minutes. Any questions?
No, I answered all the questions. So the folks who asked for US history specific things, I just emailed you literally like 30 seconds ago, so they should be there. And A. Simmons, I will send you an email as well. If you can just privately chat me your email address. And the other question was, should I keep downloading everything? Because is there a possibility that it won't be free in the future? We are free. We will always be free. We created the project because we wanted every teacher, regardless of income level or location, to be able to access what we consider to be high quality resources. So you don't need to massively download. It'll be available.
We get that question all the time.
Yeah, we do, because everyone asks you to pay for things.
Yeah.
We don't even have a registration. You just like hop in, you take stuff. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, there was a panic a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone's downloading things. Nope, it's all
Thank
good.
you, Terry.
Just one other thing I wanted to note, since we're talking about US history. If you need US history information, you can go where I showed you Aruna's got the updates, or you can go straight to the source. The Office of State Assessment for New York State is where you can get all the information. So if this is how I get to it. I type in Office of State Assessment Social Studies into Google. And I click on Social Studies. And then there is this little yellow box here, and you can click on US History Framework Exam. And just so that everyone knows, the state put out, I think at the beginning of this month, they put out some anchor papers for Part 2, which are these things labeled Set 1 and Set 2. So if you're looking for rubrics and anchor papers for Part 2 of the new US History exam, go to the Office of State Assessment website. You can find it there. And if you scroll past it, you can find all the other information they put out. As far as we know, there will probably not be anchor papers released for Part 3. But we can hope. We can hope. Yeah, right?
Sad face for us,
Sad
too.
face, too.
So we're rounding out to our last minute. So we just wanted to check in to make sure there are no other questions. This is not the last time you can talk to us, but let us know if there's anything else we should be thinking about.
You might have our contact information here.
Our contact information is not in the slide deck, but you're going to get an email from us tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, cool.
With everything summarized and some notes.
Yeah, so thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us for our very first webinar.
Yeah, thank you for hanging out with us. This is fun.
There's some, yeah. Have a great night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care. That was fun. I had fun. I had fun.
All right, end meeting.